my sister and brother and I, we always used to go off and camp and pretend we were, stranded with just our animals for company. And it takes you into a sort of multitude of different worlds.
In Claridge's hotel's huge chandelier-lit ballroom, nobles, authors, and royal watchers clinked drinks and exchanged polite grins. What is the occasion? Tom Parker Bowles' most recent culinary accomplishment is celebrated in this glossy hardback homage to upper-crust British food. The atmosphere was rich with scent, status, and luxury, but no one, not even the royal guests sat quietly near the podium, was expecting what occurred next. Tom, Queen Camilla's son, approached the microphone with practiced charm. He praised his publisher and his family before dropping a verbal grenade, a flash of icy malice hidden under his suave voice. "Prince William," he explained, "has not been good to my mother. He maintains his distance, as if she did not exist in this monarchy." The room froze. Several champagne flutes shook in nervous hands. The press wrote furiously. The Queen's son, who was sometimes ignored as a background character, had recently gone wild. But it wasn't Tom's daring charge that sent chills down the spine of Buckingham Palace. It was Prince William's reaction, deliberate, quiet, and brutally cold. He did not storm out. He did not issue a comment. He did not raise a finger, at least not publicly. But behind palace doors, wheels began to revolve, papers were retrieved, allies were summoned, and one name was scrawled in red ink at the top of a secret list: Tom Parker Bowles. Princess Anne remained in the background, seeing events develop. She was known for her restraint, staunch loyalty, and quick perception, so she saw Tom's outburst for what it was: a play in a much broader game. This was not a son protecting his mother. Camilla pushed a pawn across the chessboard. Suddenly, the invisible line between blood and marriage had been crossed. It was no longer about uncomfortable family meals or declined invites. This was a challenge to the monarchy's basic DNA, an outsider exalted by marriage, now threatening to carve out territory where none had been earned. Anne had seen enough. For decades, she polished the monarchy's armor. She was now ready for battle. What ensued was not pandemonium, but something far more terrible: a silent purging, a covert partnership, and a future king who chose revenge with velvet gloves. What began as a single statement would quickly destabilize Camilla's whole kingdom. And it all began here, with one statement that destroyed the monarchy's peace. Claridge's Hotel, October evening. London's fog hung like a veil around the stately exterior, while chandeliers glittered and bottles of vintage champagne reflected the light with dramatic flair. It was intended to be a simple affair, a literary celebration for Tom Parker Bowles and his new book on aristocratic culinary customs. Despite the crystal, silk, and polite applause, something truly unpleasant was about to be served. Tom appeared tall and strong on the platform, dressed in a tailored navy suit. For most people, he was Queen Camilla's charming son, a brilliant food critic with wit and lineage, but no claim to royal power. Tonight, however, he appeared different, focused, intentional. As he scanned the crowd, chefs, journalists, aristocrats, and a few royal insiders, his gaze fell on one woman sitting calmly in the VIP section, Princess Anne. Anne wasn't here to drink drinks or impress Tom. Camilla had invited her as a symbolic gesture toward togetherness, but Anne knew better. This wasn't a book launch, it was a stage, and Camilla had placed her son squarely in the limelight. Anne immediately recognized the plan. Tom was being tested, or worse, used. Then something occurred. Tom leaned into the microphone, his voice well-metered. "It's been difficult, he remarked, giggling lightly. "My mother, Queen Camilla, has served the kingdom with elegance and strength. However, certain family members, like Prince William, have not been particularly receptive. In reality, he maintains his distance, as if she does not exist." The entire room became motionless. The easy grace faded into a deep quiet that swallowed sound. A few startled coughs, a spilled drink, and a mumble of incredulity. Then, the flashbulbs went off. Cameras captured Princess Anne's expression. Frozen, inscrutable, but undeniably frigid. There have been familial difficulties before, but not like this. Never in public. Never before has there been such open conflict. This was not a slip of the tongue. It was a proclamation. At that moment, Tom was not a culinary critic. He was a messenger. His carefully selected remarks had just crossed a holy line, accusing the heir to the throne of abandoning the Queen Consort, not behind palace walls, but in full view of the press, the general public, and the realm's peers. Anne did not blink. Her gloved hands were tightly clenched around the arms of her chair. Her jaw had locked. She said nothing, but beside her, an assistant leaned forward, evidently terrified. "Your Highness, what should we do?" Anne's remark was scarcely audible. The son of a dangerous mother. It wasn't an insult. It was a verdict. Within hours, headlines like "Camilla's son slams Prince William at book launch" went viral. The royal rift boils up in a London ballroom. Did Tom go too far? The monarchy, so frequently a bastion of tradition and restraint, found itself unexpectedly under attack from within. Tom's remark was more than simply gossip. It was strategic, a power grab camouflaged as a personal grudge. Prince William learned the news inside Kensington Palace before it was reported in the morning newspapers. The speech text, a video clip, and a rush of phone calls from advisors landed on his desk like a storm surge. He did not raise his voice. He did not pace. He just sat motionless, reading Tom's remark over and over. In public, William kept mute. Something began to alter inside the palace, however. Not with rage, but with precision. Tom had talked openly, too much freedom. And in doing so, he drew war lines around a throne that does not tolerate slights, especially from those who wear borrowed crowns. By the time the final visitor departed Claridge's that night, the monarchy had lost its serenity. It was curled, watching, ready, because a single thoughtless comment had become a menace. William, born of heritage rather than convenience, would respond in quiet and with plan. To the general public, Tom Parker Bowles was simply a lovely culinary reviewer with a fancy accent and a taste for caviar and truffles. He was not royalty. He was not in line for any throne. But within the palace walls, his ascension had been steady, purposeful, and far from accidental. It began slowly in the months after King Charles III's accession. While William and Catherine were busy promoting themselves as the monarchy's future, Camilla was playing a different game, one that relied on proximity rather than popularity. During the coronation preparations, Tom was asked to advise on the royal dinner menu, an apparently innocuous assignment that put him in the innermost circles of palace operations. But what appeared to be a ceremonial nod was actually a well-planned introduction, one that put him in touch with estate managers, royal event planners, and senior advisors. Camilla had opened the gates just enough to let her kid enter. Tom stepped in on purpose. He began attending aristocratic events that extended beyond food and wine, developing quiet relationships with aristocrats, old money landowners, and political backers. At these gatherings, he'd talk about restoration rather than just recipes. He waxed poetic about the significance of protecting ancient estates, the benefits of sustainable farming, and the role of tradition in modern Britain. His English was refined, and his charm was endearing, but behind it all was ambition. Camilla, ever the tactician, pushed from the back. In whispered chats with Charles at Clarence House, she described it as a familial obsession. "He just wants to help," she'd explain. "A small estate in Cornwall, something to handle, something meaningful." Charles, exhausted from sickness and years of royal intrigues, consented without question. After all, it appeared to be an innocent gesture of generosity for the son of the lady who stuck by his side through scandal, divorce, and Diana's ghost. So the paperwork was signed. Tom Parker Bowles became a quiet manager of a royal estate the press scarcely noticed. The populace didn't seem to care. However, the ramifications were evident to Princess Anne and subsequently Prince William. Tom was not simply interested in royal pastimes. He was nestling inside the monarchy's infrastructure. Every estate granted him more access. Every meeting introduced him to fresh influences. All of this was made possible not by tradition or rank, but by Camilla's persistent maneuvering. She understood exactly what she was doing. Tom's role was rising rapidly. Sustainable agricultural contracts, rehabilitation funding, architectural bids, all bearing his name. He was sneaking between the cracks of royal procedure, establishing a presence where none had been won by blood. And in a lineage-based family, that posed a direct challenge. For Princess Anne, it was déjà vu. She had witnessed Camilla's climb via controversy, seduction, and survival. Now she was seeing Camilla do it again, but this time via her son. And for William, it was personal. Tom wasn't simply trespassing on royal territory. He insulted the future king in public. Camilla had played a lengthy game. However, in doing so, she had neglected one important rule of the monarchy. Power may be given, but only blood can preserve it. Prince William has lived his entire life under the burden of heritage. He was taught not to react, but to endure, not to retaliate, but to dominate. But when the remark from Tom Parker Bowles reached him, everything changed. It was a premeditated shot, delivered publicly and strategically, with Camilla's fingerprints all on it. In his own study at Kensington Palace, William sat alone. The headline blazed from the newspaper on his desk. Camilla's son publicly criticizes William. Royal rift widens. He remained silent. He did not pace. He only gazed, his blue eyes icy and inscrutable. He read Tom's quote again. He keeps his distance, as if she doesn't exist in this monarchy. William's quiet was not passive. It was precise. In that moment, the Prince of Wales transitioned from a patient heir to something far more dangerous, a king in waiting who was not hesitant to draw lines. He called one of his most loyal advisors, a man who had served the kingdom for 3 generations. William's voice was low, but his words were razor sharp. I want to know everything about Tom Parker Bowles, every property transaction, each investor, every meeting. I want to know how far this goes and how invested Camilla is in it. The command was not a display of rage. It was a declaration of war. Within hours, sensitive files were retrieved. Estate contracts, private conversation, photographs from VIP meals. An image began to shape, confirming William's fears. Tom wasn't only experimenting with heritage initiatives, he was networking his way into power, using Camilla's crown to construct his own country. And Camilla, she had always been the architect. William did not reply with interviews or headlines. He replied like a Windsor, quietly, methodically, and viciously. He began meeting with financial accountants, discreet legal specialists, and senior personnel who were devoted to lineages rather than titles. Plans were made in secluded rooms with heavy curtains. Every asset Tom touched would be evaluated. Every employee connected to Camilla's increasing network would be transferred. But there are no firings or controversies. William understood the power of optics. He didn't need to humiliate. He wanted to destroy gently and carefully. And he wasn't alone. Princess Anne had already begun tracing Tom's activities using her own network of informants. She'd noticed the patterns, secret meetings with duchy managers, mysterious grant applications, and invites to historic estate summits. It wasn't a coincidence. Tom was integrating himself into royal infrastructure, while Camilla was smoothing the way. Anne understood the stakes. This was not about politeness. This was about ensuring the monarchy's existence. And if the Queen Consort was using her son as a pawn to undermine royal authority, that authority was quite entitled to defend itself. Days later, in a foggy drawing room at Sandringham, Anne and William finally met. No titles. There are no formalities. Only 2 Windsors stood on the verge of a quiet coup. William stared his aunt in the eyes, his mouth set with determination. "This ends now," he said, and Anne, the steadfast protector of the crown and nation, nodded once. "Then let's end it." No more hesitating, no more civility. The prince had been freed. The palace would never be the same. If Tom Parker Bowles threw the first stone, William was now moving rocks. What started as a discreet probe suddenly turned into a massive royal audit that delved deep into Camilla's dark network. However, it was officially presented in the rhetoric of reform, a routine financial review to ensure transparency across the Duchy of Cornwall. Behind palace doors, everyone knew the reality. This was a targeted operation. The objective was Queen Camilla. William chose the team himself, trusted auditors with no ties to Camilla or her group. Their instructions were simple: dig into every contract, payment, and name associated with Camilla or her kid. The audit team worked quietly, sorting through years of transactions. Within weeks, they discovered the decay. At the center of it all was Camilla's sister, Annabel Elliot. In public, she was a soft-spoken interior designer with great taste, but the ledgers revealed a different narrative. Annabel had been living rent-free for almost a decade on a huge Gloucestershire estate owned by the Duchy, a property that was supposed to earn millions for royal operations. Worse, she had been earning a salary as chief interior designer for about 18 years. The title seemed impressive. Her real contributions, however, were paper-thin. Most projects had been outsourced. Some did not even exist. Millions of dollars had been channeled through contracts signed silently. Camilla seems to have established a private refuge for her sister, supported by the Monarchy. When the final report arrived on William's desk, he did not hesitate. He read it once, then again. His knuckles turned white as he clutched the edge of the pages. There wouldn't be a third reading. That evening, a formal termination letter was written. Annabel Elliot's contract was canceled. Her estate received an eviction notice. She was required to evacuate the premises within 48 hours. There is no bargaining, no exclusions. When Annabel received the news, she was sitting in the drawing room of the estate she was about to lose. Her hands trembled as she summoned Camilla from among the old carpets and family artifacts. Her voice crackled. "They have kicked me out. William didn't give me an opportunity to explain." Camilla sat silently. It was the first time her dominance had been challenged, publicly, fiercely, and unexpectedly. Desperate, she went to her final line of defense, King Charles. She found him in his private study, exhausted after another round of medical procedures. The brightness in his eyes was dull, and his voice was quieter than normal. "Charles," she muttered, "I do not understand. Annabel simply wanted to help. This is cruel. Can't you talk with William?" The king glanced up slowly, blinking as if awakening from a dream. "Let William handle it," he replied softly. "I don't want any more trouble." The words hit Camilla like a slap. The spouse who had previously pushed mountains for her had now given up the struggle. Camilla suddenly discovered something awful. She was alone. Her sister is exposed, her son is under threat, her allies are scattered. And William? He had become the one thing she never expected, an opponent she couldn't control. The audit had done more than just reveal fraud. Camilla had been stripped of her armor, and for the first time since joining the royal circle, she was kneeling. Windsor Castle shone with warmth and elegance as a winter gala took place beneath its arched ceilings. Diplomats mingled, string quartets performed gently, chandeliers cast golden light across the marble floors. From the outside, the atmosphere appeared joyful. However, others who were familiar with the undercurrents of palace politics saw this as no cause for rejoicing. It was a battlefield for ball gowns. Prince William, the evening's host, strode through the throng with serene power. His black suit was subtle, but his personality was not. Every handshake and nod was measured. This was his court now. And tonight, everyone was watching to see how he would share it, with or without Camilla. Queen Camilla entered the chamber, wearing an emerald gown that shimmered under the chandeliers. Her tight, rehearsed grin disguised the fury behind her eyes. It had been many days since her sister Annabel's unexpected expulsion. Days had passed since King Charles instructed her, "Let William handle it." She hadn't seen William in person since receiving the audit report, but attendance was not voluntary. Declining an invitation to a gala sponsored by the Prince of Wales would generate more whispers than any whisper campaign. So she arrived, a painted smile, shaking hands, toasting glasses. However, embarrassment overshadowed every nice act. Then, from the shadows, Princess Anne appeared. Her clothing was sleek and black, in contrast to Camilla's jewel-toned outfit. Her silver hair swung back, her chin elevated, and her movements decisive. She did not smile. She did not greet me. She simply walked right to the Queen Consort. They gathered in a private alcove behind a gold and velvet curtain, just out of sight, yet near enough for the orchestra's music to mask the tension. Anne's voice was low, chilly, and ruthless. "Did you truly believe you could utilize the monarchy for personal gain? That you may place your son as a participant in a game based on bloodlines?" Camilla stiffened. "I'm not sure what you mean, Anne. I have only ever attempted to—" "Spare me," Anne interjected. "You and Tom were establishing an empire under our name, but you forgot one thing." Camilla gulped, her eyes narrowed. "And what is that?" Anne leaned leaned forward, her voice piercing as a blade. "You are not of royal blood. Neither is he. You were invited inside. That invitation may be withdrawn." Camilla's mask broke briefly. Her eyes glistened with wrath rather than tears. "I've given everything to this family, and now you'll give it back," Anne said, disappearing into the darkness like a phantom. Camilla stood frozen, alone. Her shaky palm grabbed a champagne flute, spilling a few droplets over the floor. The sound of laughing and waltzes returned, but she was no longer part of it. By the end of the evening, the message had been sent without a headline, a photograph, or a controversy. But it was evident. Camilla's reign ended, not via exile but through isolation, not with drama, but with purposeful stillness. And nothing, not her crown, not her connections, not even her previous victories, could reverse what had just happened. Because in that single shattering meeting, she hadn't only lost authority, ***, she had lost her place.